Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So let me make sure I am up. And I'm seeing green. Good. And let me check sound. Make sure my sound is okay. Guys, I'm a little stopped up today, so I apologize in advance. Perfect. I'm perfect. Yeah, I'm slightly stopped up, so I apologize in advance. I saw this last night, and I gotta be honest, I would have did the video last night if it wasn't that late. The guy on the side is Bill Binney. Bill Binney worked with the NSA for the past 30 years. He was one of the guys who was instrumental in creating his own surveillance system called Thin Thread. Like, this gives you this idea of the caliber of person that Bill Binney is. And he became a whistleblower in the techniques that the NSA was using to mass surveil the society. He didn't like it. He worked there, didn't like it. He was like, I don't like this. We're using mass data collection. They tried to put a case on Binney at one point. Now, I'm going to let him explain and introduce himself, because this was a mind-blowing interview. I'm not going to interrupt in a lot of this, and I'm going to break this into two parts. Before I get too far into this, because I'm slightly excited about this. Elizabeth Voss is going to be on the show at 5 p.m. this evening. So I have an interview with her. I'm looking forward to it. She's from Disobedient Media. That should be damn good. All right, now back to this. In multiple videos on my show, I've made this argument and I've made this point that, yes, the surveillance of Trump is a big deal, but the fact that they can do this with anybody is a much larger deal. And it's mind-blowing to me that this is not more mind-blowing to other people. Your government has made the choice that, despite of how they cloak it, this fig leaf, that they can surveil any person, they can strip away any person's Fourth Amendment rights. And I find this to be amazing that this is okay. Now, they put this up and they dress this up in the fig leaf of a FISA court. But I've made the point over and over and over again that 99.7% of those things are approved, meaning that FISA court is just a rubber stamp. It is not protection. You can't even call it a court. They introduce certain information, and the judge takes the information that particular agent is giving. There's nobody there to talk about your perspective or whether or not the information is legit or value, or give them a value to the information. No. At that point, they surveil you 99.7% of the time. That means that judge just have at it. Fuck his Fourth Amendment rights. Go at him. Go at him. Do you believe that agent who wants to strip away your Fourth Amendment rights is being fair and earnest in his pursuit to strip away your Fourth Amendment rights? If there's nobody else whispering in that judge's ear, do you believe that particular judge is going to take in testimony that there is no other testimony to take in? That agent is whispering to that judge, and that judge is taking whatever that agent says as being perfectly okay and legit. And that agent is going to get that warrant to strip away your Fourth Amendment rights. There's another point to this that I made also, that when Obama left, one of the things that he did was allow other agencies to use the information that was received through the NSA, meaning the NSA is pulling information in these secret, unconstitutional ways, and the NSA is tipping off elements of the other departments. Understand what I'm saying? Like, you're literally having secret information used against you, slipped in to other agencies throughout the United States, all across the country, and this is being done right now. Thousands of people. Part of my excitement for this is because it means I was ahead of the curve. Like, I was talking about this before anybody else said anything about it and before I heard anything about it from anywhere else. So I love the fact that this has been something I've been screaming about on multiple episodes. This has been something I've been pointing a finger at, saying, oh my God, I can't believe that this is allowed. And oh my God, I can't believe more people are pissed off at this. And oh my God, lefties are so animated to go after Donald Trump and so willing to fuck over their own rights to go after Donald Trump that they completely ignore that the NSA literally has a surveillance state, that this country has its own version of the Stasi working in the background to put people in prison. Your Fourth Amendment rights has been repealed. Full stop. Full stop. If they can go in and they can use the secret court to get any random person then that means you don't have a Fourth Amendment rights. If 99.7% of those proceedings, those cases that these guys bring against people, these requests for FISA warrant, for a secret court, for a secret tribunal, for them to surveil you, to pick through your information, if 99.7% of those things are approved, that means anybody, for the most part, is fair game. Anybody's fair game. And there's been one case of abuse after the next, after the next. I think even up to, like, when this thing first started, I think there were like 75 different cases of abuse. Benny is going to talk about this. I'm going to break this video into two parts, and 75 might be off, but multiple cases of abuse where these guys were lying to the FISA court. And mind you, lying to the FISA court is a felony. That's a felony. But how would the judge know? How would anybody know? It's a secret court. How would you know that I lied to these guys? It's a secret court. That's somewhat of the problem with the secret court. This stuff is done in the shadows. Stuff done in the shadows. I'm going to let Bill Benny introduce himself, and I'm going to let Jimmy Dore take the beginning of this. I have a second segment to this that I want to do, talking about specifically about Trump and the treason that's associated with the Nunes memo. Many lefty networks, because they want to attack Donald Trump, has taken the perspective that the Nunes memo is a nothing burger, that there's nothing to see here. Nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, ultimately, in order to get a warrant on Donald Trump, these guys miss or withheld information from the judge. Not to mention, they had no cooperation for the information that they got. They essentially surveilled Carter Page. And I got to be honest, this is worse than what I thought it was. Because they have the capacity for two hops. Meaning they can hop from Carter Page to somebody else to somebody else. Understand what's being said. So the surveillance on Carter Page is not just on Carter Page. It's anybody who's potentially going to contact Carter Page within two hops away from Carter Page. I'm going to hold off on that one until he explains it, because that's mind-blowing to me. I had no idea that that was taking place. I might have been ahead of the curve, but it's like however bad I thought it was, it is worse. So I'm going to let Bill Benny talk about this. I'm going to leave this to his devices, meaning for most of this. I may interject one or two points, but for all intents and purposes, I want Bill Benny to explain this. This was a mind-blowing interview by Jimmy Dore. Congratulations, Jimmy Dore, for getting this interview. It's fucking amazing. And good job, Jimmy Dore, following on my coattails for having this conversation. I'm teasing. All right, so I'm gonna let Benny take this away. Bill Benny on Jimmy Dore show, dropping mind-blowing information. Again, two segments. The first segment is going to be essentially two separate videos. This video talking about what they've been doing in regards to mass surveillance in the United States, and the second video talking about Donald Trump and the Nunes memo. Now, look, I just one last injection. I don't like Donald Trump. If you caught Donald Trump on something like the emollients clause, fair game. You can present it in court, you have a go at him, you drag him out that office, fair enough. I don't necessarily like it, but fair enough. But this, you're allowing mass surveillance. You're saying that mass surveillance is okay because you don't like Donald Trump, and it goes after Donald Trump. You're supposed to be lefties. You're supposed to question this idea of power. You're supposed to question and not necessarily like this idea of localized power. But in this case, apparently lefties are just as susceptible to everybody else as everyone else when they dislike things, to go against or stand beside the thing, even if they, under normal circumstances, dislike, if it allows them to attack something larger that they dislike that much more. You might want to say Donald Trump is a maniac. I would agree with you that Donald Trump is a maniac. But this is problematic. You have a surveillance state. You have a literal surveillance state, a surveillance apparatus, surveilling the entire country, and you can make a case in the entire world. And at any point, what you hold true is to be the Constitution can be ripped to shreds to go after any random person, even if that person is the President of the United States. There was a concerted effort by Democrats turning the FBI into their own agency of sorts, going after Donald Trump. That's what was taking place. They tried to install that woman into that office. Now, I understand lefties don't like Trump, but I will argue to you that your problems are larger than Donald Trump. You've allowed a surveillance state to be instantiated into the United States government. And you cloak it in wrong things of freedom and justice and everything else. You are blisteringly unaware of the society that you're in if you think your problems are purely related to Donald Trump. Yeah, I'm not going to rant. I'm going to let Bill Binney explain what's taking place. Like I said, this is going to be in 2 parts. I'm going to break the part in the middle. Don't worry, I'm interject before I break it. But this video is rather long, so I don't necessarily want this to be all in one video. So, Bill Binney, 30 years working with the NSA, having a discussion about what the United States is doing from the standpoint of mass surveillance, and even going into the illegality of this. Making at one point saying that this was somewhat treasonous, what was taking place in regards to the election. So, let's take a look at Binney. This man is a fucking patriot.
Welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. You know, maybe you're as confused as me about the Nunez memo and who to believe and who not to believe and what does it mean. Was it before they said it was the most important thing and then it got released and then nothing happened. And so I just want, I figured if there's anybody who can explain it to us, it's NSA whistleblower and member of VIPS, Veterans Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, who debunked the WMD's lie in real time as it was happening. So he's here with us right now. You know him from the show before. It's William Binney. Hi, Bill. How are you?
Pretty good, Jimmy. Good to be with you again.
Oh, it's so good to have you back. And so just so everybody knows who you are, just to remind them, you were with the NSA for 30 years. You were, would it be a stretch to say you were their top code breaker?
Oh, I would never take that claim on, but I did some pretty good stuff, so I had a lot of fun doing it. So
okay, so if you see, they even made a documentary about him. We're going to put a link. The Good American, and that's how what a smarty pants this guy is over at the NSA. He invented Thin Thread, which was a metadata collection that was actually superior to what they're using now, and it protected everyone's identity. So, and it was inexpensive, so they had to get rid of that right away. Anyway, that's who William Binney is, and he's you know, he's had the FBI lie about him. Correct? Did that happen?
Yes. In fact, they did it in sworn affidavits to the court. They also falsified evidence against us.
Right. Okay. So that's what they do to whistleblowers. And so that's why you can believe. That's why I feel like I can trust you and believe you. And because you've put everything on the line for your country and constitution and not a political party and not your own neck. Right. I mean, it's for yourself. You did it for the country. That's a real patriot. So that's why I feel like I can go to you and you can explain it to us. And I hope you're willing to. Can you explain to people? Because before the Nunez memo came out, first of all, I don't even think people realize why we have to guess about what stuff means, because everything's done in secret at this thing called the FISA court. And how do you feel about it? No one even talks about that we even have a secret court. Does that bother you?
Well, that court should be disbanded, in my view. It doesn't belong to the Article 3 courts. You know, the difference between an Article 3 court and this court is an Article 3 court, you have opposing views on an issue, and both views are heard by the judge, and the judge adjudicates based on the law and the Constitution, but he hears both sides. In the FISA court, it's run on the 6th floor, I believe, of the Department of Justice building. There is nobody there but government people, and the only evidence they hear is what the government tells them, and they can't verify any of it. And so that means they're totally trusting to the government that lies to them and everybody else. And that's part of the felonies that are going on here and have been going on since September 11, has occurred. They've been committing these kinds of felonies all along.
So, okay, so people don't even understand. We have a special secret court that's supposed to be there to fight terrorism, but somehow they got and you can get you can get warrants to wiretap people and stuff, which they did to the Trump administration through this court, this FISA court. And so I just want people to know that that's what this is all about. And the reason why no one really knows what's happening is because it's all done in secret. And what you're really describing is that it's not an adversarial process, that there's just there's nobody there. There's no defense to the judge. There's just what the government, the FBI or the CIA, whoever's presenting the case, what the Justice Department, what they say to the judge. That's all the judge hears. He doesn't know if it's verifiable. He has to take their word for it. But it turns out the FBI has even admitted a bunch of times, like said back in 2002, correct me if I'm wrong, that they actually did present false information to the FISA court all the time. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, that came out in August, I think, of 2002, when they were talking about that FISA court. And it came out that they had basically misrepresented evidence in a court at least 75 times that the court found out. So that was at that time. Now, since then, they've gone through about 30-some thousand requests, and they've refused, I think, 5 or 10 maybe, and that's about it. There's another program going on here that's not even addressed by the FISA court, and it's done in secret, also in the Article 3 courts, the regular courts. What they've been doing, and this is where they have a program that's called parallel construction. That is, they will use the NSA data for common crimes committed inside this country.
What?
Because
now, I have to be honest. By the time they got to this point, I'm sitting there like, oh my God, somebody else is talking about this. Like, I got to be honest, I fundamentally did not understand why no one else was talking about this. I kept thinking to myself, I was like, maybe I am misunderstanding something. Like, what am I missing? Like, they could do this to anybody. Like, why do you believe you have a Fourth Amendment? Like, why? Why do you believe that the founders of this particular country had a Bill of Rights? Why do you believe they made the choice to say, you know what, we don't like this idea of illegal search and seizures? The reason is because governments, whether you want to talk about a king or a queen or parliament or anything else, governments love this idea of accruing more power within that government. Meaning, if they have the capacity to search and seize and surveil and all that, they're going to do those things. They're going to take the power that you give them, they're going to use that power against you. They're going to use that power against you, and that's exactly what they've been doing. So this is a mind-blowing thing. Now, I kept saying to myself, I was like, wait a minute, but where are all my lefties? Where are my lefties? It's like lefties sound off. Why are you okay with this? Fuck that. Where are all my right-wingers who are there like, the government is in our affairs, the government is in our business, the government is fucking around? Where are all these guys? Because this seems like a big fucking deal. It seems like a big fucking deal. They are using a secret court, and they're using secret information and handing that secret information down to other agencies in order to lock people up. Fuck the Fourth Amendment. Fuck the Fourth Amendment. Fuck your capacity for being able to look at the evidence as being used against you, and even to be able to get into the conversation on whether or not that evidence should be able to be used against you if it was legal, meaning the means to which they got that information against you. This is massive. This is massive. And I did not understand why all of these other networks were not screaming about this. I understood why media wasn't. Like, I always made the assumption that media is in cahoots. Media, anytime you look at CNN, MSNBC, or Fox, oftentimes they're giving you a perspective of the narrative. They're like snake media. So any perspective that they give you of the United States is going to be done from the standpoint of the United States was acting in the correct way. So if it's military, we're in Syria because we're supposed to be in Syria. No, it's not on the border of North Carolina, but we are bombing in Syria. Yes, that's what we were doing. Now, the government is not critical of this position. The government takes this position as being just the way things are and the way things have to be. Yemen, it may bring up Yemen. It would not necessarily bring up the United States' role in Yemen. Won't touch it. Won't touch it. Your media looks at this stuff from the standpoint of state. That's the way it does. Now, yeah, it may go after certain people, so it may say, oh, there's an email crisis. There's an email crisis because there's also a competing interest of their revenue, meaning how much money can we accrue from the stories that we do. But for all intents and purposes, these guys are not going to trespass around certain lines. I accept that when I watch that particular media, knowing that they're going to only give me a perspective of things. They're not necessarily going to give me the truth. They're biased. I accepted that from them. I didn't understand why independent media or lefty media was dealing with a case like this. Dealing with a case where FISA warrant was brought up on a president, mind you. And the evidence that they used for this was sketchy. And all of these networks, all of these supposedly lefty networks, didn't look at this. They didn't care about this point. They began and end with, we dislike Donald Trump. And so even if they use a bogus dossier because they wanted to believe the stuff in the dossier because they disliked Donald Trump, even if they wanted to take that bogus dossier, salacious and unverified, based on Comey himself, and use that as a way of attacking Donald Trump, they were okay with it. They didn't complain about it. When Nunes put his memo out, before or barely when that memo first came out, oh, it's nothing, burger. Nothing to see here. They told the line. Not, wait a minute, 99.7% of these things are approved. The biggest weirdness of this is, even if the agent told that judge that, yes, we've taken unverified and salacious information and we've given it to, and this is what this dossier is built on. And yes, it's the same source, meaning we don't have multiple sources verifying this bogus dossier. Don't have multiple sources at all. But we're going to pretend as if we have these things. We're going to pretend as if these things are being backed up in some way. Even if they told that judge, do you realize 99.7% of the time those things are approved? Meaning, they might have approved it anyway. They would have likely approved it anyway. Yes, your issue is twofold. One, there were shady dealings in the way that the government was being run under Obama within this regard. Meaning, tilting the Justice Department to go after a political opponent. That's a big fucking deal. And before you say, well, dude, come on, why do you believe that? Loretta Lynch was already pushing Comey in order to change his testimony. We know that's literally an evidence. That's not something that anybody is conjecture or anything else. If she was pushing him on that front, and I'll engage a little bit of conjecture, what else was she pushing him on? And beyond pushing him on that front, you had agents who were in the FBI that had ties to the Hillary Clinton campaign. And being vocal about their dislike of Trump, being vocal about this idea of being on board for Hillary Clinton, and being instrumental in changing the language, getting Hillary Clinton off, while at the same token making sure that Trump got wiretapped. This stuff wasn't disclosed to the judge. I guess my biggest issue is, yes, it wasn't disclosed. That's a big deal. But two, even if it was disclosed, 99.7% of the time, they still would have did it anyway. It wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have mattered. I'm going to let him finish. I'm just saying, when I heard this, I was like, yes, finally, somebody else is talking about this. I am not the only one bringing this up. This is a big fucking deal. Either you believe that there are elements of the constitutions that are important within regard to your personal liberty, meaning protection from the government itself, or you don't. And if you're willing to throw that away just because you dislike your political opponent, then what else are you willing to throw away? Then you don't really believe in those things. Those things aren't important to you. Ultimately, you just want to use those things just like the other party members want to use those things as political hit points. No, this is a big fucking deal that goes beyond Donald Trump and goes beyond it goes beyond Donald Trump. It goes beyond the Carter Page thing. It goes into this idea of, do you want a surveillance state? Are you okay with a surveillance state, even when that's used from the standpoint to go after a political opponent? I'm going to end it on this and send it back to him for a moment. But imagine if that was Donald Trump doing this. Imagine if that was Donald Trump. Say everything else was the same with the exception of the political players. It's not Obama in office, it's Trump in office. It's Trump's and his goons in office. And information is coming out in the exact same way with the exact same players. Would these lefty networks be so quick to jump to the side of, oh, this is bogus? Or will they say, holy shit, the Trump administration was surveilling the Obama administration or the Clinton administration when she was trying to come into office? I would almost wager, I would almost guarantee you that the position they're taking now would be the opposite if the political players had changed in this. This is purely just politics. This is not the reality of it. If lefties were looking at this and the political players had flipped, and I'm trying to nail this down because I think I said it poorly before. But if it wasn't, say Trump was in office. Say Trump was in office. And say the information is exactly the same, that there was a warrant on Obama as Obama was trying to get into office. And they find that they were surveilling the Obama administration for Russian influence. Imagine if all these things were the factors. Do you think lefties would be dismissing this? Or do you think they would be like, holy shit, that right-winger was looking into the Obama administration, looking for Russian influence? I think their hair would be on fire if the items in this particular case had changed or flipped. Let's listen to Benny, because he's going to go into more explanation of what this is. I just wanted to put a stamp down that I was talking about this prior. I thought this was a big fucking deal, and so I'm glad this came up with somebody who actually was involved in this particular thing, because I'm not in the NSA. So me thinking this is a big deal is from outside looking in and saying, wait a minute, this looks like a big fucking deal. They shouldn't be able to do this. Let's see this Patriot.
Collecting all the data on everybody, they can do this. Okay, they can find drug smugglers, drug dealers, everything.
See, but that's against the Constitution, though. You can't do that.
We're doing it in secret, and we never tell you. That's why we know it's a crime. That's why we're keeping it secret from you. That's the whole point of it. And they're doing this regularly, and the FBI and the Drug Enforcement Administration, including the IRS, is a part of this. And they're all looking at this NSA data to find common crime.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Well, that's blatantly unconstitutional and illegal. Why isn't... I'm not kidding. Like, that's... My hair should be on fire about this, right, Bill? That sounds crazy to me that they were able to do that.
Well, it even gets worse now. You have to wait for the worst to come along. Once they find common crime in the NSA data, they tip off local and state police to go arrest these people. They don't give them the evidence. They say, go arrest them. Go here when they come up in the truck or something, park in that parking place, go arrest them, bring in the drug dogs and find the drugs. Then in order to justify the arrest, what they do is called a parallel construction. And this is policy run by the Department of Justice of the United States. What it is they say, okay, we know these guys were criminals. We had it in the NSA data, but you can't use that data in court of law because it wasn't acquired with a warrant, so it's not admissible. So we have to go find the similar kind of data. Since we know where it is, it makes it easier. And we send the police out to do our own little investigation, assemble that evidence, and say, okay, now we're going to substitute this evidence for the NSA data in the court of law when we try them. When we do that, we can't put any of this statements of where the original source was from NSA. We can't give the court, the lawyers, or anybody in the criminal process the understanding that that was the original basis. So that's perjury. Every time they did it, and according to Senator Feinstein, she stumbled and fumbled and gave this away. She said, well, this program's been so valuable, we put hundreds of people in jail every year with it. Well, that's thousands of people in jail based on perjury by the Department of Justice of the United States. And that's been going on since 9/11. They've been using the domestic spying program, the Stellar Wind program in NSA to do it.
So they're supposed to be using these NSA spying, right, in theory, to catch terrorists, right? Isn't that what this is? And why we're willing to give up this certain amount of rights is because they're supposed to be spying to get terrorists. But what you're saying is that they're using the surveillance state for regular crimes, and then they're telling the cops, they're tipping off the cops, the local cops, about the crime, and then telling them. Did they tell them to scrub where you got this originally from and then construct your own parallel investigate, or just go ahead and here's the information you have, now go find some of your own evidence? That's what they're doing?
Well, they don't. They do that for them. They create the parallel construction, but they don't give them the raw data from NSA.
Okay.
All they do is tell them what to do once they know what's going to happen from that NSA data.
Right. Okay. So they'll say like, hey, there's going to be a drug deal go down at this place.
Right.
And then they'll show up, and that's not legal.
When Reuters reported this, they interviewed one of the federal agents involved in the program. And he said, this is such a great program, I just hope we can keep it secret. This is destroying our judicial system.
What? And so so how come there isn't anyone? I don't understand, Bill. It can't.
I'm glad you explained this. So, to give a more basic explanation, or let's give two. You're a member of Occupy Wall Street. You're one of the leaders. And you have encampments in New York. You have encampments all across the United States, all these different places. Now, they don't like that you have Occupy Wall Street. They hate that you have Occupy Wall Street. I mean, you're making a big fuss about this kind of income inequality thing, and all of these guys love this system because this system has allowed them to be where they are. So the Obama administration works with local law enforcement. Anything that comes up on the leaders, anything that they can use against those people, anything that they use if they're talking about, let's say they're talking about meetings, they're talking about being in certain places, those things can now be used and surveilled against these guys. Think about if you call these guys terrorists. Think about what you might be able to find on some of the people who were leaders in those encampments if you want to try to actually break up those encampments and use something against those people to break up those encampments. Like, I'm trying to get across this thing of you have a surveillance state. And in this capacity, they can find information, look for information, get information on individuals, and use information against those particular individuals. Threaten, for that matter. Let's take it to a more legal way. Because right now, what we're talking about is, for all intents and purposes, what they did on Trump. We need a FISA warrant on this guy. And we have two hops, meaning we can go from this guy to the Trump administration itself. So yeah, Donald Trump was being wiretapped. Why do you need a FISA warrant? Well, because we found this dossier. We found this dossier. And look at all this information. He got peed on. This guy almost got peed on. Do you really want the guy who was peed on by a prostitute, or who had a prostitute pee on the bed, to be the president of the United States? Putin has stuff on him. Now, you don't explain to the judge that, wait a minute, this was paid for by the Hillary campaign. You don't explain to the judge that there was nobody backing us. You don't explain to the judge that the person who was trying to put this case up got like all of this money. His wife got all this money from the Clinton campaign. You don't explain any of that. And the sad part is, even if you did, they probably still would have got the warrant. He was a political campaign. He might have been a maniac, but he was a political campaign. He should have been afforded the same respect as any other political campaign. And they're using the government itself, the apparatus, in order to attack one of the candidates that they didn't like. Now, if they could do that to a president, certainly they could do that to something like Occupy Wall Street. Certainly they could do that to something like the Tea Party. And take it to a more basic level. I call Bob Ramirez. I say, Bob, I send him a text message. Bob, I need to get a bag. For whatever reason. I'm having a party coming up, and I want a bunch of stoners to be at this particular party. So come on, Bob, let's do this. Bob says, all right, and Bob is willing to do this. Now, for whatever reason, somebody doesn't necessarily like me. Maybe they considered me, we don't like the stuff that this guy's saying, whatever that's about. But they listen to the communications that is taking place, meaning parties coming up, and Bob. And somebody says, tips off the local cops. Look, go to Bob's house at this particular time and pull those guys in, and you're going to find XYZ in this particular place. Now, the cops otherwise wouldn't have known. For all intents and purposes, they shouldn't have this information at all. They've invaded the communications in order to get this particular information. And yet and still, they would set up a parallel case in order to come up with that information, pull that information off in order to lock you up. The information, the origins of the information came from a secret process. They don't reveal to the judge that process or how they got that information. And the only thing they reveal to the judge is the information that they pulled in a parallel way. Mind you, though, the inciting thing, the pretext of all this, was this kind of illegal behavior in which they surveilled your communications. Let me finish. This part is almost done.
It can't be as bad as it sounds, because this obviously someone would be doing something about it, right?
Well, they're talking about doing something now because it's being used against the politicians in Washington. That's the only reason they're talking about it. On the common people, we don't matter, okay? We're dealing with the Department of Just Us here, and we're not included in that.
And so why isn't there more people screaming about, you would think there would be people on the left and right who would be upset about the government intrusion of privacy like this? Because here's the problem, right? So why this matters, right? So if people go, I don't care if the government reads my email, if they catch a crime, I'm not a criminal, who cares? Well, let's say you caught the government committing a crime and they knew it, and now they know that you know it, right? Because they're spying on you. Right? And then they can now smear you or arrest you or charge you with something before.
Just kind of make my case, the shutting people up thing. I don't like the group that you're in. I don't like the thing that you're saying. I don't like the fact that you're putting this information out. And at that point, being, you know, looking for something on somebody in order to get that person shut up or get that person put out of commission. I understand people say, well, yeah, man, I don't care if the government looks over my stuff. Do you believe that they put that Fourth Amendment in? They fucked up with the idea of the Fourth Amendment. Do you believe they put it in because of the issues that they were having during those times? And do you believe that the issues they were having is somewhat unique to their time? It is not. It is not.
Or you get to give your is that what you're saying? Kind of that's one possibility, right?
Well, that's what they did to us, Jimmy. They made up information. The only difference is I caught them at it. So I threatened them with malicious prosecution. If I didn't have that evidence against them, and I gave them the evidence, so they knew I had the goods on them, so they backed off. That's the only reason they did that. Otherwise, and somebody at the Department of Justice felt so bad about what they were doing to us, they sent us a copy of their draft indictment on us. And so that even gave us even more evidence of their lying and perjury in an affidavit going to the court. That's a felony.
So it seems like no one gets in trouble anymore for committing, you know, like Clapper famously lied to Congress on TV, and nothing happens. And people see what they do to, you know, when Petraeus, when he gives up classified information, he gets a job teaching at NYU, and when someone else does it, they take a picture of themselves on a nuclear sub, a selfie, they get thrown in the clink, you know, right? So we see there's two tiers of justice, right? And now you're saying that this secret process and this parallel construction and this secret FISA court is now coming back to bite politicians in the ass. That's what you're saying. So now you're saying people are actually talking about, what are they saying? How are they, who's talking about it? What are they recommending?
Well, I mean, it's this Nunes memo. It shows really the connection with Christopher Steele, his connections with the DNC.
All right, I'm going to break that into a separate video because that gets fucking fascinating. That part gets just as fascinating when he gets into this idea of Trump and Russia and the DNC's interaction with this. And I like the way he looks at this. He's looking at this from the standpoint of, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican. He's looking at this from the standpoint of a human being. I am a human being looking at the memo that this guy put out. And what this guy is saying in this memo is true. And if what this guy is saying in the memo is true, then this XYZ is also true. This is also true. I love it. Absolutely love it. Guys, I'll take a few questions or a few comments. Bullshit, man. Yeah, I don't mean unite under one banner. More so, how do we get all voices and different perspectives heard? I know there's competing interests, but the goal is the same. I guess it depends, man. I guess it depends. It depends on what we're talking about. I mean, even if we're talking about the left, let's not even take the entire political spectrum. We're just talking about this faction of the left. You have people who believe that merging into the Democratic Party is a good thing, regardless of what the Democratic Party does. The Democratic Party could cut Social Security. They can destroy welfare. They can have these militaristic wars. They can, for all intents and purposes, be neocons. And these guys on the left still say, vote Hillary. Vote Hillary. If you're talking about a conversation and you're talking about uniting, just because these guys may want to have the same perspective doesn't necessarily mean that we are pushing in the same way. Their path is fundamentally in a different way in this case, meaning there is no coming together on that point. If that's where you are, if your point is vote Hillary, then there is no coming together on that point. There's no coming together on that point. There's no situation to which I think that's okay. So yeah, we may say, yes, we have this idea of a kumbaya in the sun, but the way they're talking about going, it's like if you stay on this road, you get to the moon. That's their path of events. So I understand this idea of coming together. I think people can come together on certain things. Like if we're having this conversation on Medicare for all, then yeah, we can come together on that point. If we're having this thing of keeping us out of these foreign conflicts, yes, we can come together on that too. But the fact is, the totality of a party or something like that, I don't think you'll be able to get people around because of that. Like at some point, you're going to hit your head on something where it's like, I don't like this. I can't abide by this. And you're either stuck with saying, all right, I'll just go along because I like the other stuff. Or or balking at it, meaning you hit your reform versus revolt component. Let's see. We have somebody who doesn't like him. Joe Trezo. I hope you guys know Bill Binney is a fraud. Trump told CIA Director Pompeo to meet with him, and after the meeting, Pompeo reaffirmed that the DNC was hacked by Russia. You poor fools. That doesn't really say anything. I mean, that's not really proof of anything. Yeah, dude, that's not really proof of anything. And again, I put it this way. If any of these guys come up and say, we know as a flat fact the DNC was hacked by Russia, fair enough. Nobody has ever said that. Nobody will ever say that. Now, fact is, Bill Binney was in CIA NSA for 30 years. Bill Binney did create the threat. I'm missing what you're saying. Fact is, the information that's associated with this guy is actually correct. So, let's see. MREFs. His description of these acts being seditious was so accurate in his admission that he doubts Sessions would do anything about it was very forthright. Binney is a hero. Yeah, agreed. Kalita, I can't believe Jimmy was able to stay seated. Well, you saw he was like, my hair should be on fire. George Pagog, just another day in post-constitutional America. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. Unlikely ally. Last year, DNI Reports literally complained that alternative media is more popular on YouTube than mainstream media. A year later, that mysteriously swapped. I made a crappy little vid on it, but you can look it up on DNI. Tim Floberg. Oh, yeah, Busher, man. Stolen government, stolen Justice Department, stolen rights. Stolen, more like giving it away. Giving it away. Snowden warned us. Snowden didn't warn us. That's the other part, man. For the people who are like, Bill Binney doesn't know what he's talking about. He's saying the same thing that Snowden is saying. You understand that, right? This is not one guy. This is somewhat collaborated by the information that's being revealed. You literally have a FISA court. That's not in question. That exists. The FISA court, 99.7% of the items that come before that court gets confirmed. That's not conjecture. That's literally what is. They had the capacity to go after Donald Trump. When Donald Trump said he was wiretap, people laughed. That's not conjecture. That's what is. They are using parallel construction. I've said it. I didn't know the word, but fucking A, I'm glad he could say the word. But I said the exact same thing. I was like, I even did the story. I did the article that was showing that this stuff was being used in this way. I didn't know that this went back to 9/11. The last story I saw on this was that Obama was allowing other agencies to use this information before he left office. And I'm like, if he's that terrified of Donald Trump, why are you giving Donald Trump this particular power? Bill Binney comes on, explains it, and makes his point. I'm missing this idea of what this guy is saying that's wrong. It seems like what this guy is saying lines up exactly with the world that we're interacting in. Bullshit, man. Jamal is getting 100+ views these days. No problems these days. Fucking excellent work. Oh, thank you, Bullshit, man. Yeah, I've been seeing them more often. It's funny how that works. It's like slowly start with 30, then 50, then 70, then at some point you get 100 and you're like, holy shit, there's 100 people here. Pat Cook, the 1% is the greatest threat to national security. The 1% is one of the greatest threats to national security, but that's more of us. I mean, you're talking about 1% of the population. There are 99% of us. The question more so becomes, why is the 99% complacent? When people ask me, and I'll end it on this because I want to get to the other video. But when people ask me, they say, why do you focus so much on Democrats? Like, why are all of your videos, not all, I mean, I talk about Republicans too, but why are so many of your videos, why are you so angry? What is the thing in you that digs you about Democrats? The difference is, one party I have no links to. I have no belief that that party is anything but obsequious to the rich. And the things that they say, for all intents and purposes, back that up. At this point, they're not even hiding it all that much. Democrats, however, they say something fundamentally different. The things that they say are different. The things that they are trying to get people to believe is that they're the softer party. They're the party that's on the left. They're this. Joe Manchin, that asshole, one day said, "We go straight to your heart. We go straight to your heart." Tom Perez, one moment after the next, getting shit on by birds. And in another moment, screaming about his values. Nobody knows what those values are. It doesn't stop him from screaming about his values. This is the guy who wanted them to use the fact that Bernie Sanders was white against Bernie Sanders. If one party doesn't give a shit and the other party is screaming about their values and screaming about the poor and screaming about helping people and all this other stuff, social change, and yet they don't really do anything on those fronts. I mean, ultimately, Republicans scream about the deficit and Democrats scream about the poor, but neither one of these parties really care about those things. This is just their cultural or political identities. It's stuff that they say, not necessarily anything that they do about it. Your behavior would be different if you cared about those things. If Democrats were more philosophically beholden to what they were supposed to be beholden to, meaning Republicans are beholden to the rich, Democrats are the poor, the workers, the disenfranchised, etc., 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 then I don't really care about Republicans at that point. Republicans wouldn't necessarily matter. A batshit crazy Republican never get elected if the Democrat was actually what the Democrat was supposed to be. I don't need to focus on Republicans. The issue, the problem, is the Democrats. That's the problem. If you're looking for something to be fixed, if you're looking for something to be retooled, that's what you need to get fixed and destroyed and retooled. Republicans are going to be batshit crazy. You have no power over them. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, the cash that they get is going to make them complicit. But the problem is, the cash that Democrats get also makes them the same way. They've come up with a least worst strategy. But that's all it is. It's political strategy. Republicans are off the fucking reservation. The more off of the reservation they are, the better it is for us. We can crouch up slowly, close to them, without actually being them. And then we can make the argument, look, I know they want to build 5 concentration camps, but we only want to build 3. We just want 3 concentration camps. Isn't 3 concentration camps logically better than 5? So shouldn't you vote for us because we just want to build 3? And you have lefties saying, yes, this is a good idea because these guys want to build 3, the other guys want to build 5. You would have lefties saying, yes, you should go with the party who's building concentration camps. I'm asking this question, why are you enabling your party to build concentration camps in the first place? If they're going to build those camps, let them build those camps without us. That's my point. If you need to fix something, if you need to retool something, that needs to be Democrats. Democrats is look, the left is the only party that gets anything accomplished. That's the only party that believes in getting anything accomplished. Now, we don't have that in this country. It does not exist. So, if you're trying to get something like that, then you have 2 routes. You either start a new party, or you break and destroy and rebuild the one that's there, that's supposed to be there for the left. So, that's why I focus on the left so much. That's why I focus on Democrats so much. Because nothing gets accomplished. Like, take everything else off the board. Just talk about environmental challenge. There was a report the other day. It was like, we have no time left. They're talking about permafrost, like 80% of the ice is gone in the Arctic. Now, that is mind-blowing. They're talking about getting to the point where there is no ice in the Arctic within like 5 or 10 years. Yeah. I'll leave it. I'm going to go to the next one. Let's see. Gardner Maddow mentioned Debbie and that makes their ears perk up, especially in this insane climate. Bullshit, man. Can you imagine trying to explain the surveillance state to people, say, 60s? They spy you from your homes, every cell phone and letter. They know your friends and track where you are. Yeah. I mean, we've allowed something that's better than any German surveillance, any Russian surveillance, any of that stuff. We've allowed something like that in our country. And because the country used the propaganda of freedom and justice and democracy and all this other stuff, this is mentally Orwellian. People work 50 hours a week, barely for, it's like making $30,000 a year. Just a subsistence. They were fucking hamster on a wheel. just making bare subsistence. If they lose their job, if anything happened to their paychecks, those people would be in desperate straits without a social safety net to make sure that they're okay. And they would say this is freedom. And they would fly the flag and they would vote Republican. Or vote Democrat. Propaganda is an amazing weapon. Propaganda is an amazing weapon. When you have people who are in chains and still assert that they're free, that is an amazing weapon. And in this particular case, you have people believe in the land of the free, the home of the brave, and yet they're being surveilled upon. And at any moment, their rights can be stripped away. It's amazing. It's fucking amazing. Brandon Wilson, Black Panther Party, MLK, anti-war activists. That's why I brought up Occupy Wall Street. I wanted something to be closer to home. But yeah, you're talking about the FBI putting people in the Black Panther Party, getting these guys to fight with one another, trying to get Martin Luther King to kill himself, screaming that these guys are communists. I mean, all sorts of stuff. And the sad part about it, we've ended up in this unenviable spot where back during the McCarthy era, they were saying like Martin Luther King was a communist plot and all this other stuff. It wasn't that these guys were upset in the conditions that they were living in. No, that wasn't it. It wasn't that blacks were upset because of the conditions and racism and everything else. Nope, it was a communist plot. And you have one Bernie Sanders coming out saying Black Lives Matter is a Russian plot. If you guys enjoy the content, there's nothing else to say about it. I mean, it's embarrassing. If you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can support through Patreon. Guys, I have another video coming up probably in the next 10 minutes, however long it takes for the YouTube to flip over where I can do another video. So that's going to take on the second part of this. Bill Binney talking about Donald Trump in the Nunes memo, and it goes so far as to say it was treasonous. And his reason is going to make sense. Yeah, his reason is going to make sense. You'll like it. So, in 10 minutes, however long it takes us to flip, it's going to be Bill Binney again coming back for part 2.